ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Robin's Nest. If you enjoy listening to me ramble about motorsports, cars, or pretty much anything else that just crosses my mind, make sure to like, subscribe, leave a comment, turn on notifications, share this video, scream from the rooftops, tell your friends. As I've mentioned before, I'm going to keep mentioning it until it's over, that we are under a copyright strike currently. So any word of mouth would be greatly appreciated. You know, tell everybody that this is the best motorsports channel on YouTube. I think it is. I don't know if you agree. You should agree because it's true. If you're interested in die-cast cars, t-shirts, hats, racing memorabilia, auto parts, check out our eBay. Link is in the description. We have all kinds of stuff on there, and we have a sale going on right now for like 15% off on everything. So make sure to check it out. And so I wanted to talk about stupid flies getting on my nerves. Landon Huffman. If you don't know who that is a short track racer. Races late models in the Cars Tour, which is the tour, the series that Kevin Harvick and Dale Jr. co-own together. And so Landon got into it with Kevin's driver. Kevin owns a team, and I think that kid's name is Landon too. I think Landon Lewis, if I'm not mistaken. But it drove me nuts because Landon Huffman got into it with Kevin, and what happened was both those guys, Landon and Landon, got into it on the racetrack. Huffman came over to Lewis's car after the race was over and was gonna wait for him to. You can't tell from the video if he's, and I'll put the link in the description so you can see what I'm talking about, but you can't tell really if Landon's in the car or if he's at the hauler. But whatever the case is, Huffman's standing there waiting for him to come out. He's standing at the back of the car, and Kevin's standing to Huffman's left, propped up against another car. And then Kevin proceeds to ask Huffman what he's doing there, and Landon goes into it and starts telling him what he thought about how his driver was racing him. And then Kevin stands there and he's like, "Well, I'm not the driver. I'm not the driver. Landon is." Okay, well then why did you ask if he's standing there? If that's going to be your reaction. I'll tell you why, because he was expecting Huffman to not tell Kevin like it is, and that's exactly what Huffman did. And then once that started happening, Kevin's like, "Oh, no, I'm not involved." Like, don't open your mouth in the first place. I've got nothing against Kevin Harvick. I've always liked him. I liked him ever since he started in Cup back in 2001. I used to be a huge fan. I've got no personal issue against him other than he has his moments. And I think everyone can agree where he's arrogant. He is, and that's fine. I don't have a problem with that, but like, be arrogant for the right reasons. You know, if you're giving this kid in Landon Lewis's case, and I'm not talking smack about that kid because I don't really know him, but if you're giving this kid the best equipment out there, okay, and he's going out there and he's running over these guys and tearing up their stuff, you know, why are you going to get an attitude with someone who's ticked off at him? That doesn't make any sense. You know, if I were in that position, I owned a car, and my driver goes out there and runs over somebody, my driver's going to have to face the music after the race is over. I'm not going to run interference. I'm not going to, now unless it gets physical, then I'll, you know, we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. But as far as someone just telling my driver like it is after he tore their stuff up, yeah, he's going to have to handle that himself. And that should be the way that it is with every team owner and driver. You shouldn't go there and get in between drivers trying to. And that's a thing that's happened in motorsports over the years. It used to not be so bad where you could, if you had a disagreement with a driver, you could actually go and talk to them. Now everybody wants to get involved. I don't understand it. Even when these guys are just talking and there's no fists being thrown or anything like that, it's just a conversation. Team members want to run over there and jump in the middle over team owners, and I just don't understand why that is. Like, let these guys talk, man. Let them talk it out. Like, Landon Lewis is never going to learn anything if he's got Big Brother over his shoulder the entire time running interference whenever he pisses somebody off on the racetrack. That's, you know, he's got to learn. And if you keep running interference for him, he's going to be an arrogant little you know what. He's not going to have any respect for anyone on the racetrack or anything that he does on the racetrack. And then eventually what's going to happen is he's going to run over the wrong person, and that person's going to give him a butt whooping. Put it politely. And you piss off the wrong person, it doesn't matter how many guys you try to put in between you and them. I mean, especially if it's one of these guys who's busting their butt, paying out of pocket mostly, barely got any sponsorship. It's a homespun deal. And, anyways, that's just my take on that. I don't like Kevin, not talking smack, but dude, let these guys have it out. Don't sit there and try to act like you're Billy Bad Butt because you're Kevin Harvick and expecting Huffman to back down. No, dude. Just stand over there like you're doing, up against the car, looking tough, and keep your mouth shut and let them hash it out. It's the way it should be. Speaking of that, I want to say this, and I don't want to piss anybody off, but I kind of talked about it before, and I think some people got their feelings hurt. That's not what I'm trying to do, okay? I want to say that Chicago is a great city. There's great people in Chicago, okay? And there's parts of Chicago that are really, really nice. I've been, so I can tell you it's really nice. And, I've got no problem with Chicago overall, but what I have a problem with is that you cannot argue the fact. Statistically, it backs up what I'm about to say, that Chicago is one of the most dangerous cities in the country. That is just a fact, okay? And that's not a sleight of hand. That's not, like I said, I'm not trying to dog anybody out. I'm not trying to dunk on anybody. It just is. It is a dangerous city. So, and this is coming from someone who lived in Birmingham forever, in downtown Birmingham, okay? I know it's not as big as Chicago, but Birmingham's rough, man. That is a rough city. And it's been that way for several years now. It's home for me because I basically grew up there, and but it doesn't take away from the fact that it's sketchy. And Chicago's got places that are just like that. They had a mass shooting last night. I think 4 people ended up dead. I haven't checked lately to see if there's been another increase in that number, but I know last night before I went to bed and I checked it, there was 4 people that were killed in mass shooting thing with a record release party or something like that. And most of them were women, or all of them were. I'm not exactly sure, but I think they were. And my point being is, why is NASCAR trying to force an event in cities like that? You can't tell me that like the overwhelming majority of the population in Chicago are NASCAR fans. I will never believe that. Okay, if that was the case, why didn't they go to Chicagoland? That track didn't just shut down because of COVID. Like, their attendance numbers leading up to COVID were horrible. COVID had a lot to do with it, but if you don't sell seats, there's no viable way to keep the racetrack open if it's not making money, if it's not turning a profit. When the contract and everything was signed with Chicago and NASCAR, it was signed by Lori Lightfoot, who was the mayor of Chicago at the time. And she lost the election to Brandon Johnson. And if you'll remember, there was kind of a little bit of a contentious, they try to keep it out of the headlines, but there was a contentious back and forth between NASCAR and Brandon on whether Chicago was going to honor the remaining years on their contract. And I think this is the last year. And so there's already, Brandon obviously doesn't want NASCAR there. And I'm sure the logistics and everything has a lot to do with that, with streets being shut down. But then also the fact it's just Brandon Johnson, and you can hate me all you want, but Brandon Johnson is one of the worst mayors that's ever lived. Okay? And that's not because of his policies. I don't know much about his policies because I don't live there. What I know is from what he has said publicly, and what he has said publicly from his mouth, and this is not me making anything up or believing what other people are saying. He's not... well, he does certain things to benefit certain people over other people. Just put it that way. I guess that's the most polite way that I can put it. And I mean, he's being investigated for ethics right now. So, he's just he's not a very good mayor. And that's also not Chicago's fault. They didn't have good choices during their last mayoral campaign. Lori Lightfoot or Brandon Johnson. I mean, it's not good. But my point being is, like, why are we trying to make this happen? The Chicagoland track shut down for a reason. People weren't going. So our solution to that is, let's just go have one downtown. Well, I mean, it's not been great as far as numbers. I think the first year was pretty good, but I would love to know how many of those people actually came from out of town into Chicago to watch that race. I would venture to say a good portion of them came from out of town. And I just think there's better places. I think the hot rumor right now is that they're going to go to San Diego, and I don't know. I don't know anything about San Diego. Okay, I don't know anything about the West Coast. I've never been west of Texas. I hope that does great. I really do, and I hope once the San Diego experiment's over, that they come down south and run in one of these cities down here, because we've got big cities, and I think it'd be a lot more welcome than it would be in a place like Chicago. Like I said, I don't know about San Diego, so I'm not going to make a comment on that, but I don't know, it's just one of those things. And speaking of Chicago too, I think we all remember the Xfinity race. What was it, last year, where they ran, I think, 10 laps. It started raining. They threw the red flag and then never restarted the race. And that wasn't because of weather. That was because of the city, obviously. NASCAR could have restarted that race whenever, but the city had a problem with it, and so they didn't restart it. So it's like, the shortest race in Xfinity or Busch or nationwide history. Usually I think the rule is you have to make it halfway for it to be official. They made it a quarter of the way. I think Cole Custer ended up winning. It was such a joke. So, but anyways, it came to my attention that a lot of people don't. If you follow my channel, if you've followed it for a long time, if you've looked at some of our old videos, I've made some videos about the cars on our property. We have a junkyard here, okay, and I call it the graveyard. Where cars come to die, because we've got so much stuff out there. It's unreal, the amount of cars. But a lot of people, I guess, just didn't know that we had that stuff. And so I was talking to some guys earlier, and I took some pictures. We have a couple of, I think they're called 720s Nissan trucks, really old ones from like the 70s, if I'm not mistaken. We have some Porsche 924s, a Porsche 944, a Porsche 914. We have a bunch of BMWs. Then we have a couple of Zs. I think they're 240 or 280s Zs. There's two of them. I'm not familiar with those cars enough to tell you. The badges are gone, so I don't know exactly what they are. Fun story about one of those, though. There's two of them. They're a pair. They are exactly the same car, and one of them, this is my father-in-law's property. And before we moved down here, they had, or where the cars are sitting, before we moved down here, when we was in Birmingham, they left to go to Alaska, okay? And while they were going to Alaska, someone snuck up here on the property and took the entire drivetrain out of one of those Zs. Engine, transmission, the works. I mean, there's nothing left of that car. They took whatever interior pieces were left in it, just gutted it. My thing is, like, if you're going to do all that, why not just take the whole flipping car? Why go through the trouble of taking the motor and transmission out? Just take the whole flipping car, And there was no cameras up here at the time, so, like, we had no way of knowing. And then a similar thing happened not long after that. There's two Mitsubishi Mighty Maxes, which are little small pickup trucks. The same thing as a Dodge Dakota. And one of those, the engine was stolen out of it as well. But no, there's some interesting stuff up here, though. We have a Chevy step van. It's white. And these things are so cool. When I was a kid, I always wanted one, because I think it was either Terminator 2 or it was the first Bad Boys movie, or maybe it was both of them. I can't remember. But at the end of one of those movies, they're in one of those vans during like a chase scene. And I saw that when I was a kid, and I always wanted one of those, and now we do, but I don't know what's wrong with it. It's been sitting for 100 years. But, the engine you access through the cab of the truck or of the van. And I think it's got, I'm not sure, but I'm pretty sure, fairly certain, that it's got a V8 of some kind in it. I'm not sure. If you know what those vans have in it, let me know in the comment section, because I'm actually kind of curious. Yeah, I haven't really tinkered with it that much. But then we have that. We have a couple of old school Volvos, and then we have some Triumphs. And we have an MG GBT L TT. I'm just kidding. I don't know. It's MG GBT or something. Hardtop, two-door car. And you know what's curious to me is, and there's a Volkswagen Beetle here. There's a Nissan RV here. There's a Ford dump truck. There's a Ford flatbed truck. There's a Chevrolet flatbed truck. Just a whole bunch of stuff. A bunch of Nissan pickup trucks, old ones. Got a Honda Civic, and a Honda Accord, old ones. It's just interesting to me, some of this stuff. How did it end up here? Like we've got Triumphs, MGs, BMWs, and Porsches in Alabama, in South Alabama. We've got a junkyard full of those cars. I didn't know that many ever existed on this continent, to be honest with you. That's wild to me. I know some of that's, I don't know exactly what was sold over here. I'm assuming all of it was, if it's here, unless, well, no, it had to have been sold over here. I doubt anyone in Alabama would have paid to ship any of that stuff over here. But I could be wrong. You know, I was driving down the road not super long ago. I think it was like a year or two ago, and I saw a Seat Leon in Alabama, of all places, and a Peugeot. Now, they don't sell either one of those over here, unless I'm mistaken. And so that means that someone shipped them over. Why? I couldn't tell you. Why would you want to? Because the thing is, like a Seat and a Peugeot, they're not expensive cars overseas. They're relatively inexpensive, you know, in context of modern cars. I don't think modern cars at all are inexpensive anymore. They're all expensive, and they're all basically luxury cars nowadays. In comparison to like some of the new stuff that I had in the 2000s, yeah, totally different. But like I said, I don't know why you'd spend the money to ship that stuff over here unless you had an affinity for Seat and Peugeot for whatever reason. Maybe they were handed down to the people from like a relative or something. I don't know. But the Seat though is a cool looking car, Seat Leon, and I think it was, I don't know what year it was. I'm not familiar enough with them because they're not sold over here. The only car that's not sold in America that I know quite a bit about is Skoda. But I say that's the thing too, is Skoda's a relatively inexpensive car overseas as well. So I guess just to each their own. But I'll tell you this, they had practice for IndyCar today at Mid-Ohio, and wouldn't you know it, Kyle Kirkwood and Alex Palou are at the top of the sheet. Of course. It's been Kirkwood and Palou all season. No one else. And it'll likely be that way again this weekend. It's like, what is even the point in watching? If you know, I mean, you know how the race is going to end, so what's the point in watching? There's not one, really. Unless you just really, really love racing. I do. I'm going to watch it because I love racing. I love IndyCar. But for the casual fan, what's the point? When you know that it's going to be like one of the same two guys all season. It's just, it's annoying. It really is. Hopefully that'll change soon. Sooner rather than later. We'll see. But if you enjoyed listening to me ramble about motorsports, cars, or any kind of, well, anything in general, make sure to like, subscribe, leave a comment, turn on notifications, the works. If you are, and like I said, we're under a copyright strike for, I don't know, 90 days, I guess, is when it started. From that point, it's 90 days. So if you would share this video, you know, spread the word, tell your friends, you know, it's much appreciated. And if you're interested in diecast t-shirts, hats, auto parts, anything like that, make sure to check out our eBay, and the link is in the description. We have some pretty cool stuff, and we do international shipping on virtually everything into every corner of the earth except for Antarctica. We shout out to my friends from Brazil once again. You guys are awesome. Thank you for watching. And from every other corner of the planet that's tuning in. means a lot. Until next time, we'll see you. God bless. Take it easy. And also, for all my American friends and family and friends that are watching, happy 4th of July. We'll see you next time. Peace.